So I met both Kelvy and Alfredo. We met 2 years ago in 2018 in Rungstegard in Denmark, where Mara and Christina Hemmingsen were organizing UVIS, a global gathering of visual practitioners with over 200 practitioners joining in. And I was doing the facilitation. Let me share a visual with you. So this is how it looked like.
Good memories.
It's right. So we had, we had a little bit of a crazy time as well. We had dinosaurs asking David Sibbett, why so serious? And yeah, it was a very joyful time, a very colorful time. And Kelvy and Alfredo delivered one of their visual practice modules that you guys have been delivering around the world. And for those of you who don't know Kelvy, she's the person who developed a discipline among the visual practice that's called generative scribing. And that's taken the visual practice to a completely new disruption. And it's connecting listening from a completely different place, deeper listening, and connecting things from intuition through really channeling what it is to be an artist, engaging with a social field, to systems thinking. And together with Alfredo, you were offering these fantastic visual practice modules, and we were preparing the one in Berlin that was supposed to be a special one with 5 modules for 5 days, people joining whichever module they wanted, or all of them. And then Corona happened. And I remember that we were trying to understand if we're gonna have to do something or if we can still have the modules. And I have to say that I was for myself thinking, it's not going to be here yet. Let's, let's do the program. And Kelvy and Alfredo yeah, you knew. So you knew that something else needed to happen than us trying to meet in Berlin. And it's really special to share it in this realm, because the people who are meeting here are people who work as facilitators, as scribes, entrepreneurs, intrapreneurs, people working with teams in very diverse ways, who very often are in a similar position of either being the client or working with a client and having to move from an in-person meeting to an online meeting, and wondering how can we make sure that the quality doesn't get lost, and how do we translate that so that we still make something worthwhile, or maybe even unlock a certain potential that if we were going with a meeting in person, we wouldn't be able to work with. One of the things I always think to myself is that the visual practice modules, they are about visual practice, but for me, they are one of the most, socially engaged and political learning opportunities I have been through as well. And so when you guys decided to move from in-person to online, one of the core aspects was also the democratization of learning. And that this would allow people from literally the whole globe to join that. And Kelvy, I would like to ask you, I have three subjects. Let me just, prepare you for that. The first one is about the moving online. The second one is about the setup. And the third one is about building a container. So I remember that you shared that this activation, how it was called, that this is something that has been your dream for many years. And this has been something that was on the back burner. And it was just, dun, 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 slowly cooking. And suddenly the historical moment was there. And I want to ask you, how is it when suddenly you realize this is the moment to make your dream come true? And not only is it a moment to, you know, like implement your vision that you were thinking of at the back of your head, but also then that vision instantly got scaled and inspired the Gaia journey, which is now including around 10,000 people. So I just, you know, like, I just want to ask to begin with, what kind of a feeling is that?
Well, first, hi to everyone. It's really amazing to see familiar faces and to see some actual little, even if it's video faces and beings to names that I've emailed with. So it's really lovely to be here and feel that I'm among friends as I talk about this a bit. So Carolina, what you, and also just a note, I don't know if everyone here is familiar with the visual practice modules. And basically what we did was we took, as Carolina said, what had been designed as a 5-day program, which was even already a structural shift from the normal workshops we did, which were 3-day workshops. So we usually had been doing 3-day workshops in person, and something in both Alfredo and I said, no, like, let's break it down further into modules. And so we had been designing a new structure anyway. And then I had been in so I'm backtracking a little bit more of the story before just getting to the question around the dream question. And I had been in a few sessions here in the States, in New York and in Massachusetts, where I was with a lot of people from other countries, and I was feeling like, this is just not good. This whole situation is really not good. So we were kind of planning, the whole thing involved holding one reality, an existing current reality, and at the same time attending to something that was emerging. And it was holding both of those at the same time and kind of going between every single day. And then there was one day where I remember it really clearly, because on a Saturday we had a team meeting. It was Carolina and sorry, and Angela and I from PI and Alfredo. And I think it was the Saturday before we made the decision, and we checked in about, like, what would it be like, what are 4 different scenarios I had mapped out, because I had done a risk management session the week before I'd scribed for. I was like, we need to be flexible to plan for this risk, because I was like applying all my learning from the scribing into this. So I came up with 4 scenarios. We walked through the scenarios as a team. We said, we'll check in next Saturday and make a decision about which scenario to follow. And then that Wednesday, I talked with my parents individually, and I talked with Alfredo, and I was like, it's not happening, and it's awful. And I felt awful, like heartbroken that I was disappointing all the people. We had like 30 people coming to Berlin. There were another 15 people who had signed up for something in Russia. And I felt like I was disappointing everybody. And so overnight, it was awful. And then in a very quick window, I think something came, which is, it was like something in me clicked from fear and reaction into, I'm riding this wave. And like some courage somehow came up that literally, I can't even describe, I don't even think it was me, right? It wasn't really me. It was like something coming through that was just like, this is the moment to shift. And so just like ride it, just work with it. And it's usually like when I scribe, I get very scared too. And usually something kicks in of like, this is just not about me. This is about something else. And probably a lot of you can relate to this. Okay, so I'm going on a bit, but just to kind of set up the context for it. And in that night, what happened was I went into action before realizing that this was what I had had in my heart for years. For years, since starting to work with the Presencing Institute, like when we started really founding that and you know, way before ULab and way before a lot of any of the online programs, there was this sense of there is a community and there is a network around the world of people who are part of creating the possible future that we could live in. And you could call that like the transformation of society, or you could call that, you know, a number of different things. But there are people around the world who are working towards the next possibility for our species and for the planet, and for all species, really, to be able to care for all species. And we don't see each other. So this is what I said at one of the early PI meetings, was like, we just don't see each other yet. And so I started working for the community with the Presencing Institute and help in a Ning space, which is, Ning is the predecessor to Mighty Networks, right? And this was like in 2007. And so all of our work was around how to help the people who are working in the space of change see and find each other so that they can work together, so that we could come together. And that's been my work for years, you know, for what, a long time. And so this night, when I was turning in bed, I wasn't thinking about this is the moment. So this gets to Carolina's question. I wasn't thinking about this is the moment to activate something. I was thinking, who's awake in China right now? So I was awake in the middle of the night. I'm like, oh, I can text Jace right away. So I was like, I can't text Jace. I need to WhatsApp Jace. So whatever channel people are used to communicating on, I was talking with like my friend, the people in Australia, the people in Taipei, the people in India, and I went around the time zones of who was awake when to just reach out. Like, and what I said was, I have this crazy, basically I was like, I have this crazy ass idea. You know, like, excuse my language, but I knew how crazy it was. And so as I was contacting people, the clarity of the thing was in parallel to the clarity of the people. So there was no, it wasn't like the idea first and then the structure to put it into place. The idea of like what it could be, the structure, the thinking, the tone, the source, all of those things were happening at the same time for what we would create. So I know this was a bit all over the place, but just to clarify, it wasn't like I had a dream and then I acted on a dream. It was more a matter of really connecting in with the source and sort of the truth of the moment and responding to the needs of the moment. Sorry, that was very long-winded and roundabout. I'll try to be more concise in the other responses. And also, if people have questions or things aren't clear, please enter them into the chat and we can, you know, I can try to track that. And there are other people on the call who are part of this crazy journey. So Marika and Mona, I see here also, so.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for bringing Marika and Mona. Thank you for that. I intended to do that, but it slipped my mind. So yeah, and exactly, you know, like Kelvy, as you're saying, I just want to share a schedule that you sent to us. So this is what Kelvy sent to us, saying, how does it look like, people? And it was, can you see the times now? Yeah, Ella? So and I remember it was also Jace who answered like, I have no idea what I'm looking at. And I looked at it and I thought to myself, I understand it completely. And then I realized what I understand is the time zones and how time progresses in the globe. But you know, so when you look at that, there were 4 sessions per day. And you can see here like which region people normally are awake in these sessions. So there were 4 sessions per day and the program was 24/7. So we had team meetings sometimes for some people at midnight or 2 a.m., you know, and people would just stay up and join the meetings. And it was completely That's just part of the setup, because there were the 4 time zones, there were the mighty networks that people had the chance to see. There were 20 people on the team globally, representing all continents. There were 3 moves. So each module was composed of global delivery that was happening online, local practice, and global sense making. There was a very precise guidelines to feedbacking on each other's visuals on the mighty networks. There were PDFs with exercises. So Kelvy, that's just like a fracture of the setup. And with this elaborate setup that you pulled off in less than 2 weeks, I want to, I want to stress that again. What do you think was central to the success of creating a dynamics that, like being inside of the program, it was creating instant intimacy between people, and it also created a connection that is alive beyond the program?
To that, I would say love. I mean, quite simply, it's like I loved everyone who I reached out to as a team member. It was from my heart. Of course, there was the connection of, this person's in India, and I know that they can have the capacity to hold and communicate with people in India, and they understand the presencing work. Therefore, and they've been to a visual practice workshop. So there were some, rational reasons for choosing sort of for the outreach that I did. But then there was also a huge heart component of, this person cares about the community at large, and they will be able to put the community at large in front of their own needs or their own concerns. And so, and I will say that of the probably, honestly, I reached out to about 24 people initially, and there was only 1 person who didn't say like, yeah, I'll do whatever it takes. And that was purely because of scheduling. And then through the week, we ended up bringing in a few more people as guest speakers. But I think the spirit was a heart-based spirit. And I think that set the tone for the entire thing. There was also a deep respect for everyone was about to be in very different places, because coronavirus or COVID-19 it was about to be strong in Italy then, but wasn't quite yet. And Alfredo was in Bologna. And there was a huge level of uncertainty about who would be able to even be part of this over the 6 days. So would Alfredo all of a sudden, would Alfredo get sick? Or his parents get sick or something. So there was a high level of uncertainty of who could really support what needs where. So there was just we just built in a lot of flexibility. And in my mind, I had some redundancy throughout. So even, Carolina, when you were talking earlier about Zoom meetings and having a co-host, for the Presencing Institute, we have 2 co-hosts in case one goes down, but we have Zoom calls of up to, now we're actually connecting 4 Zoom rooms of 250 people each into one online broadcast of 1,000 people through Zoom, so that we can still do the breakouts. But we have a complex structure behind that of hosting and holding so that people are held in. So one answer is love, and I think the other is just the principle of attending to the container at all times. So it's not just about the content being delivered, it's how are people as human beings, how are people, and what are we doing? What are we providing that's aligned with our beings, not just what we're trying to learn for work. And so I think that was pretty core. I think I answered your question, but maybe I also went astray again. Yeah. I think I cared so much about this. I mean, that's something I can't stress enough. Like, it was so deep in my heart that this was possible. It wasn't just okay, yeah, on one level, we had all these people I needed to pay back for canceling the program in Berlin. And then there were like all these other factors that were, like pragmatic factors. But at core, what I cared about was our community is about to crumble with what's coming. And this is a moment to connect us energetically somehow. So obviously I still care about it a lot because when I talk about it, I get emotional, but did I answer your question?
I really appreciate, Kelvy, you given this as an answer, because this is what, like with the Leadership Festival, with the collective and the community, this is what we're observing as well, in how people more and more open up about being heart-driven and about this being their guide and this being important and it not just being an add-on or something fuzzy or nice, but this being the actual place where part of really important truth lies. Mm-hmm. And we're beginning to say, for example, that our event is around, like building a heart-driven transformative community of practice. This is something we would have never said 2 years ago, right? So there is something shifting, and it's shifting because we're stepping into this vulnerability, and with all the emotional cost of what it takes to say that, we're admitting that. And by this, we're building more security for the ones that are coming after us to not make themselves so easily ridiculed if this is what they show. So I have a couple of technical questions, but I'm just going to put them at the back. And now I would like to ask you about the container, because there was something to say about the, like the energy of the sessions and the energy of the team that hosted all of that. And some participants were reporting that they felt, like in trance, or that it was like a different time or a deep time or an altered state. And there was something like an underlying current in the atmosphere of the calls. And as much as I respect that there are some things that are not to be talked about, from, like the level of that is possible to be translated into words and is possible to communicate also with others. Like, what is it that you pay special attention to before and during hosting a session to build this kind of a container?
Yeah, again, I think it goes back to a genuine care and trust, and probably also delight and surprise. So all the people who were on the team, I have experienced that with in different settings. So the team had not experienced that as a team, but I had experienced that, Carolina, with you when we did the last workshop together in Berlin in 2019, and we didn't have soap in the rooms for people. And we hadn't worked together yet, Carolina, and you went out and you bought blocks of soap and you chopped it up and you made beautiful little packages so that people could take soap back to their room. So when this was, when we were about to shift everything online, I knew you had an attention to detail for looking out for people. So, okay, so then what role of the various roles that we would need was best suited to that? And that was for each person. And again, this is like the whole thing came up where the structures came into place as the needs of the whole thing became clear. It was like there was a skeleton of the design, but it was like the skin and the organs and the skeleton sort of all came up at one time. They all sort of evolved at once. And the quality in the team, I think that as we had these calls together as a team, the qualities from each person started to become clear, and then others could, we had a very fast cross-pollination. So this is a good example how, for scaling, because you know, one person discovered how to play music before a meeting, probably Alfredo. And then we started using that in one way in the North America calls or the America calls. And then Marcia in the America calls started doing something differently with the journaling practice. And so then we would have an all-team call and reflect on that one part. And then that would spread over to Asia before the Asia call. And then Asia would innovate something that then we would learn about and then bring it back to the Europe call the next day. So I think it was like, there's like a way that the individuals had freedom to do what they knew how to do well and to follow their own skill and talent and sensing and heart. And then at the same time work in small teams and then be part of a regional team and then part of the larger team. So there was a way that people could activate individually and then also come back to the whole. And that was a similar process for the sessions themselves. So people were coming in for learning and then going back to practice and then coming in for sense making. So this is to honor the extrovert and introvert in the field, the design, so that people could have time on their own and together. And I would say that the pattern of the team, the pattern of the core with Alfredo and myself, and then the pattern of the team regionally and as a whole, set the pattern for the larger community and how people felt held and could trust each other and also free to just draw what they wanted in their own way. So it was a mix of structure and freedom, I think. I'm kind of curious to hear also from Mona and Marika, if they have like what their sense of like how the feeling, like, I don't know, maybe Carolina, maybe you want to restate your question because again, I lost it, but yeah, I guess I just also want to bring in their voices because that was part of it too. This was not about me delivering content. This was like a whole team effort around certain things that we all knew about that we wanted to help share out.
Wonderful, thank you. So like restating the question just really briefly, it's like the quality of the container was exquisite. If people want to learn to walk this path, you know, like what is it that they can pay attention to so that they can attract that into their practice? So Mona, Marika, if you would like to share, go ahead.
Now I don't see Marika, so I can, yeah, I'll just start. I think actually it was you, Karo, who said that in one of the debriefs afterwards that it felt like the whole team was showing up at the best possible at all times. So that also made you constantly wanted to show up the best, even if there was a small glitch in that structure, because it was really complex, time zones, a lot of people, emails out, mighty network space. Even though if there was a glitch, there was never a blame. So everyone really showed up and held it all together. I think that was super powerful to work in a team of that many people, and you had a constant feeling of everyone pulling together when it was needed. And there was not, that's your role, so you should do this. No, if there's something missing, everyone is filling the gap. And I think that was super, super powerful. And that hosting online is not only on Zoom, it's in the emails, it's in the spreadsheets, it's in that communication, that people are not hanging in mighty networks with questions for 7 hours before they can start their practice. I think there's so many details that is super important to, yeah. Marika?
Mona, I love it how you always add something that the rest of us hasn't thought about in that very moment. It's completely amazing. Marika, just check in with you if you would like to share.
Yeah, I think someone said, or some participants, I remember they said, this is so well done in just 2 weeks' time. And then one of us, well, maybe Kelvy herself or someone else said, basically, this wasn't done in 2 weeks. This was built on in a few years. I mean, yeah, of course, this is not something that you do overnight. I mean, not with this level of quality, with mighty networks, with all the support behind it. And what I think was also very important was the tone of voice and all the communication. So then in that way you attract the people you want to have in your groups, right? You become the magnet of the people you want to deal with. And then you get magic when the right people show up. And I'm sure there's many more things, but let's keep it to this.
Thank you so much. Kelvy, I would like to ask you a very practical question as the last one from me and our team. It's actually Mara, your question. Like, what is, like, when you design a flow for an online meeting, what is the difference? Like, what are you designing in that is different from a meeting that you would design in person?
Yeah, this is something I've really been thinking about this week in particular. Also after a call, another call that I was on where somebody asked me about what has changed with listening, my listening when I'm scribing online. And I can't underemphasize the role of the heart enough. And I don't know if we're designing our online structures or online meetings to let people show up as their whole beings. And I don't necessarily know what that looks like, but we know what it's like to plan a meeting with an agenda and items that we need to get through and outcomes. We know that. And I always felt like scribing offered and facilitation offers an ability to bring in the softer elements or the less tangible element, the more organic elements of ourselves into a room. So through a drawing, you can influence like the feel of the room. And I don't know how that happens now online, but I would say that we want to consider how we create spaces where people can connect as beings, not just as little thinking boxes, but how do we bring our full beings into these online spaces? And I don't really have the answer for that. I don't know how scribing supports that, but I can't imagine this sustaining itself without us somehow working to deepen our humanity.
So what Marika added in terms of deepening our humanity is as well humor. And I think that's absolutely important, you know, like when things happen and how you hold them. Yeah. Mara, I wanted to check with you if there were any questions in the chat.
Most of the questions are answered, but have been 2 people asking if this is going to happen again.
I don't think I've recovered yet. Yeah, definitely.
Too early.
The humor was starting to see Kelvy completely breaking down. I think I was I'm like seeing me at 2 in the morning in the same clothes for 5 days in a row. No, I don't know. Yeah, a lot of people have asked too, and I actually don't know if we ever could do it again. I think it was a moment in time. Honestly, I think the content will come back in some form in different places. With the Presencing Institute, we've just launched U Academy, which will be more of a capacity building part within the Presencing Institute. And I was talking this morning with my colleague Julie about what visual practices programming we could bring into that. So I think you could be on the lookout there for some things. But right now, Alfredo and I, we don't have any, there's no plan for. The world is just, I don't know, things are changing. It doesn't, you'll know when you see something out there online, all right, I have a crazy idea, then you'll know something's brewing. Right now, there's nothing planned.
Okay.
But I just want to say one more thing is the comment that Marika made about this not happening in 2 weeks, that this happening in over time, is there was a bringing together of many networks also, and previous experiments, previous prototypes. So we had been considering this as a prototype in the spirit of a line of prototypes. And so it built on structures from ULab, it built on global classrooms with the Presencing Institute, it built on work that the Value Web had done. It brought together a lot of previous experiences. So I'd say that's just something to consider in how we start designing these online meetings or online gatherings or coming togethers, that we can bring in, go out to the edges of our knowing and bring in practices and ways and cultural things that work in different contexts and mash it up, just like break things down and mash them up, because this is a new kind of kitchen. So, yeah.
Thank you so much, Kelvy, and thank you for joining us and sharing this behind the scenes, because there is often this what we see and what we experience, and there is a lot behind the scenes that is so rich.